Greetings, I'm Caffeine Rage, and welcome back to the Sunday Sampler. This week we're taking a look at the book series of Alice in Wonderland. This is a visual novel of Alice in Wonderland, self-published by Kurisu no Patto. And I think I have the pronunciation pretty close. I will admit that it's not my native tongue, so yeah, that's about as good as I'm going to get, to be perfectly honest. There will be a link in the description below as per usual, and of course this is a review copy because this is, of course, the Sunday Sampler. So let's go ahead and just jump right into things. What do I mean that this is a visual novel of Alice in Wonderland? I mean that this is a visual novel of Alice in Wonderland. This isn't an adaptation or, well, okay, it is an adaptation technically, but this isn't inspired by Alice in Wonderland. This is Alice in Wonderland verbatim. Well, close to verbatim. There are a couple characters that have been gender swapped. The White Rabbit, for example, is female instead of male. So some of the pronouns have been changed. Not all of them. Well, let's just go ahead and start talking about the story just in general. The story is, well, the novel is 26,000 words, approximately the same length as the source material. And like I was talking about, the genders of a few characters have actually been swapped, not just the White Rabbit. But the White Rabbit's probably the biggest offender, not because of the gender swap, but because the editing just wasn't quite there. In one passage in the second chapter, the White Rabbit kept going from being referred to as he, to she, to he again, to she again. And it was something that I started looking for, and I noticed a couple times, but that one passage was by far the biggest offender. So there needs to be a little bit more editing on the text itself. It's not so bad that it's unreadable, but it's something that I just caught. And I will admit that I'm not the greatest at editing, so the fact that I caught it, yeah, there's something going on there. So overall, like I said, this is approximately 26,000 words. So it'll take you just a few hours to read, assuming that you read it, about the average speed. And it will be plus or minus a little bit of time, of course, depending on reading speed. But it also includes 5 languages: English, Russian, Spanish, Chinese, and Portuguese, actually. So you do have a fair number of text options to be able to check out, assuming that you could read those languages, of course. Because, yeah, there is no voiceover in this. And that's, well, it's obviously because this is a budget title, which I'll get into the price at the end of the video. It is a shame that it isn't an audiobook, though, because I think that would have added a lot more value to it, because Alice in Wonderland is, well, it's a 150-year-old story. There's been so many adaptations of it. I mean, Disney did this, 60 years ago now? Oh, has it been 60 years for Alice in Wonderland for Disney? It just kind of hit me there. So the fact that they didn't really do, well, I shouldn't say they didn't really do, they didn't do anything story-wise, and everything was in the visual department, feels a little bit cheap to me, to be perfectly honest. And while we're still talking about the audio side of things, the soundtrack, I will say, is rather nice for the most part. The audio track is all classical music, Mozart, Chopin, Schubert, that sort of thing. But the audio is very, very loud on the music, and there is no way to turn it down short of going into the Windows mixer, or your OS's equivalent, of course, and turning it down there. There's no way to do it in program. And the music is so loud, actually, that a couple of the pieces actually have audio clipping, where it actually is so loud that it distorts the audio. So that is points off to the audio there. It's really just a shame, because the music does do a fairly nice job of setting the mood. It's just one of those things that classical music and books are kind of fit together. And they chose some really pretty pieces for various parts of the book. It's just a shame that some of the audio is a little bit sloppy. And also, some of the scenes drag on so long, and the visual and the audio doesn't really change, that some of the shorter pieces actually start to loop, and these pieces are so distinctive that you really notice the loop. So it's one of those things that really needs, well, it honestly needed a little bit more art, which brings us to the visual aspect. The art is nice, but it is very limited. In the gallery, there's only 12 pieces of art, and the gallery filled up by the time I was in chapter, I want to say 7. I actually didn't finish the novel myself, mostly because I'm not a huge fan of the source material for Alice in Wonderland. I like some of the more adaptations, because it just doesn't click for me. It's one of those things that I understand why people like it, but it's just not for me. So the fact that I didn't even finish the story, but I finished the gallery, shows you just how few art pieces there are. Granted, there is a lot more art in the game than what shows up in the gallery. The gallery focuses on art pieces that do not use the character sprites. It's just a static background, or a background with a little bit of animation. For example, falling down the rabbit hole, the clocks of the background are animated, but other than that, it's a static image. And the character's sprite or model never changes. So it's one of those things that it's drawn out to the point that the art needed. I would say a few more pieces, particularly the higher quality stuff, because there's really 2 sections of the art. There's the high quality, no character sprite version that they really milk, to be perfectly honest, just because they want to focus and get as much of it in as possible, because you're not going to be repeating a lot of scenes with that art. And then there's the sprite based, where it's a background image and the character sprites moving around in the front through a handful of different poses, to be perfectly honest. Neither is better than the other, but it's just one of those things that the gallery just was filled up by the time I was about 2/3 of the way through the story. So it just shows you that the art is not quite as diverse as it really needs to be. And also in some sections that they go into a black screen for several passages, actually. And also, while we're talking about the art, let's talk about the elephant, or should I say the rabbit in the room. The fact that they replaced iconic characters with bunny girls, cat men, turtle girls, etc. I will say that it's going to be a personal taste issue more than anything else. The art is well done, but it's also, that's the big selling point for this, to be perfectly honest, is trying to bring Alice in Wonderland to someone that is interested in seeing a rabbit girl with her drifted beard. So that's going to be your selling point, to be perfectly honest. So let's talk really quickly about the technical issues here, because there are a fair number. This is a kinetic novel, of course, because this is based on the classic work. So there's no choices. There's really no replayability unless you're going back and rereading the story just for the fun of it, or checking out the other languages if you're able to read them. There's no options menu at all, so there's no going in and tweaking the audio or turning on and off, voice acting, but there's no voice acting to begin with. But also, there's no chapter select in this, which is really strange, because you would think that they would have a chapter select for a kinetic novel like this. Particularly a classic like Alice in Wonderland, someone would want to go in and check out their favorite passage, for example. But if you don't make a save just before that passage, you're going to have to go through the entire novel, and there's no autoplay or skip feature. So it's click, 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 and I hope your favorite passage isn't in something like chapter 10. On one other slight technical issue that actually is a fairly decent one is the fact that I never got full screen to work correctly. Hitting Alt-Enter would honestly just crash the game for me. I'm not sure if it's just my particular system. I haven't seen really anyone talking about it, but then again, this isn't exactly a very popular title overall, so there's not a lot of people talking about this game just in general, so I'm not sure if that's going to be just a blanket issue or what's going on there. And one final technical issue is that the history, the previous text, only goes back a little ways. There's not a lot of breathing room there. So if you're just clicking through and you kind of lose your place, you're going to have to go back to a previous save or just start from the beginning once again, because there is no chapter select. Because, like I said, the history goes back, it's, I would say, approximately the page from the original source. And honestly, there's really little excuse for that. Other visual novels will have a very, very extensive history, being able to go back several hundred or even a few thousand words. So that is almost inexcusable, but it may just be being very picky on what is otherwise a budget title. So let's just wrap things up. It is a bit hard for me to recommend just because I don't think there's going to be a huge crossover between people that want bunny girls and people that want bunny girls in Alice in Wonderland. But I'm sure that the market is out there. I mean, after all, it is the internet. And if it wasn't for the bunny girls, to be perfectly honest, I would say this would be more suited for children because it does have fairly nice music. Granted, like I said, a few audio issues there. And it is a very colorful and nice art. But unfortunately, it's one of those personal choice issues once again. Do you want to have bunny girls in the story you're reading to your children? Like I said, I'm not 100% sure of just the demographic they're shooting for here. Maybe it's just me being blind to market trends. But this is a budget title, like I said. It is $4.99, $5, which I imagine will go on sale for even cheaper if you don't want to pick it up right away. But it is, $5 for Alice in Wonderland. Granted, Alice in Wonderland is in the public domain and is a part of the Project Gutenberg. So if you want Alice in Wonderland without the bunny girls, there's your option. And that wraps up the Sunday Sampler, to be perfectly honest. There's not a lot to talk about outside of just the issues I have with it. It's a tough recommendation, to be perfectly honest. As always, feedback is appreciated, either for the Sunday Sampler or my other content, but the Sunday Sampler is the one that I need the most feedback on because it helps guide what I actually focus on in these episodes. And the feedback also gives me a little bit of a boost in my search rankings, and the better these videos perform, the better chance I have something good coming up for the future. Because, that is what everybody looks at when I get these review copies. So, if you enjoyed this, hit the like or even the dislike buttons, if you disliked it, of course. And subscribe if you see more of the Sunday Sampler, my Let's Play content, or the podcast, which comes out on Fridays. As always, thank you for watching, and we'll be sampling something, actually fairly soon. But until then, I'll see you.